off your suit.
Hello, beautiful people. I am Oliver Perrin, speaking today with Mr. Tim Rudisil from high atop a mountain, here within the comforting confines of a safer space. I am wearing this patch on my eye because I am trying to play some games with left eye dominant versus right eye dominant. So please bear with me. Also, I didn't want to be outshone by Mr. Tim with the use of an eye patch. There seems to be something about it that has its own vibe. I like it. So I'm going to indulge myself today. Please bear with me. The topic of our discussion will be the armed populace within the United States and whether or not having an armed populace really makes a difference when it comes to other people coming and invading the country or dealing with a corrupt government. You know, very often you hear people talking about how, well, if we've just got small arms, the weapons that a modern military has are just so powerful that it really doesn't matter. You couldn't do much against your own government if they tried to sick the army on you, that kind of thing. But before I jump into that in just a second, please stay subscribed on the main channel, Semiagog. Please subscribe to this new alternate channel, A Safer Space, where I will be posting content until the 2 content strikes over at Semiagog lapse. This is the only way to get around some of the latest monkey business brought to you by YouTube, among other social media platforms. Please follow this channel on Twitter. Please follow it on Minds, on Gab. All of the content is available on BitChute as well. And for those of you who don't know, I have 2 BitChute channels. One is Semiagog and one is A Safer Space. So all of the content going up here is going up on BitChute. I encourage you to follow the channel there. And Patreon is available for those who are so inclined. Thanks as always to the patrons so kindly supporting this channel. So that is out of the way. So we can jump over to this subject of private citizens in the United States and whether or not, and if so, to what extent, an armed populace acts as a deterrent, both for people who might be invading from abroad and for people who, the idea of fighting back against a corrupt government here at home. There's a quote attributed to Yamamoto, the Japanese general, and I have no idea whether it is genuine. It seems that people have argued it is not. However, it does seem to reflect his overall attitude, comments about sleeping giants and all of the rest. And in any case, it sort of eloquently makes the point that I want to examine, which is this idea that he said when asked about invading the continental U.S., he said, basically, if you try to invade the mainland United States, you will find a rifle behind every blade of grass. So with that out of the way, Tim, given that you have colorful past life experiences that, involve such things as the military, what are your thoughts on this idea of an armed populace? Does the fact that we have so many guns in the country and such a relatively high percentage of people who know something about using them really matter when it comes to dealing either with an invading force or with a corrupt government?
Fucking A right, it matters. That's why you wound up with a bunch of dead Poles and a bunch of dead French people, a bunch of everybody being dead. And that's why they always provide, the communists always provide firearms to their sympathizers. Now, in Greece, they provided them, and this let them roll over several areas of Greece until we started providing weapons to our partisans, in which case they rolled them back. The thing is that no matter how you slice it, an armed populace is the greatest deterrent to either an armed invasion by an outside force, or corruption within your own government.
Red Dawn Wolverines. Well, that's a reference you probably won't get, and it doesn't matter. So do not unleash the abuse upon me at this point.
Okay, I won't.
You did at some point. I remember you mentioned this in the past, and I went looking for it, couldn't find it. Two things actually. You mentioned to me some story that had been related to you from the inside about a major Russian politician who had visited the United States at one point.
Mm-hmm. Savannah, Georgia.
What time period would this have been?
Oh, it had been in the late 50s, early 60s. He determined that there was no future in any sort of invasion of the United States of America because these motherfuckers were slap-ass crazy. He'd been at a barbecue, and they got out of hand. They started waving their pistols at each other and chasing each other around all over the joint. His security detail had to pull him back. Get him out of there.
You mean he basically attended a country boy get-together and found out that every damn one of them was carrying a weapon?
Country boy. These were all suit-wearing motherfuckers. Somebody just brought up some topics that they took seriously and to heart after 4 or 5 beers.
So they were actually upset with each other?
Yeah, sure.
And
they were fighting and carrying on.
And so our Russian politician got the picture that...
there's a whole bunch of redneck motherfuckers out there in Savannah, yeah.
And them there got guns.
Uh-huh. And don't mind pulling them out and using them.
And then there was another story you told me, not so much a story, but you recounted that, as best you recalled, I think it was post-World War II, that there was a major move by people who'd come back from the war and the rest to essentially foster and promote more and more weapons being available to the population and more people shooting. You talked about how you used to be able to take Boy Scouts, I think, to the military ranges for shooting.
Yes,
and,
sir.
You know, I myself, since I have a M1 carbine that I inherited from my dad, apparently it's one of these ones that I hear so much about. Apparently in the late 50s, or let's just say 50s and 60s, you could pick them up anywhere for like $20 with a box of magazines.
Sure.
And, you know, if it weren't the case that the government was behind and supported this idea of an armed populace, they wouldn't be releasing all these damn weapons for resale to the public.
They wouldn't have been, no. They stopped doing it some time back. Made it against the law to release weapons to the public for resale.
And sure to give them to SWAT and police departments.
Sure, but that's not the civilian populace. See, it used to be that with the Boy Scouts anyway, and several other of the do-gooder types, that not only were you allowed to use the range, but once your boys had proven themselves by taking the basic courses, they were allowed to use the .22 caliber training rifles that the soldiers were using. They didn't even have to have guns of their own. They were provided firearms. They were provided ammunition. And they were provided the time to learn to use them.
I wonder, given my hypothesis, if indeed you could imagine that it's in question enough to have it simply be called a hypothesis, but my idea about how with multiculturalism, you end up losing both the First and the Second Amendment protections because these different groups aren't capable of talking to each other civilly. You get things like, blasphemy outrage from the Muslims, for example. Or N-word outrage. And then once the First Amendment is in question to precisely the same extent it is, whatever that might be, the Second Amendment is called into question because these are not people who are able, to say nothing of willing, to talk to one another, to talk to each other in a way that is civil. And so perhaps the programs of making the weapons available to the public and training the public started to disappear right around the time that old LBJ came in fucking things up.
About that time. See, the thing is that the military lasted longer than anybody ever thought it would, as far as providing services to the Boy Scouts. Uh, it used to be, now I don't know if it still is or not, but it used to be that we could go to the fort at McPherson there in Atlanta, and we could just fill out a requisition form, get a bunch of their canoes, and take them out, take them with us, right? Now, I don't know. Is it still happening? I have no idea.
I tend to doubt it, given that it's no longer called the Boy Scouts.
Just Scouts. Yeah, well, that's part of the program. The real thing is that no matter how you slice them, the Boy Scouts used to be utilized during these big hurricanes and so on that we've had here lately. Back in the old days, this is the 60s and the 50s and 40s and before, Boy Scout troops would have come out and gotten into canoes and gone out and saved people. They would have gone out and patrolled. They would have done all kinds of things in their uniforms, recognized as such. Now, no.
Yeah, we've talked some about the Boy Scouts on that, in that clip that we did, CHAINSMOKE discussion, right before you had this stroke sequence. I think it was called Sodalities, Brotherhoods of Men. For those who want to go looking for it, you'll probably have to look on BitChute to find it, because the content over on SemiDog is currently locked up till those strikes expire.
It's just not safe. It's just not safe.
Not safe enough. We have to make everyone quiet so that we increase the chances of war. Well, let's jump back to this aspect of the armed populace. The idea, I guess, is that, what are a bunch of dickheads with, semi-automatic AR-15s going to do about an A-10, aircraft? Or what are they going to do about, guided
What's an A-10 aircraft or guided missile going to do about a bunch of dickheads with 38 caliber revolvers, 9mm semi-automatics, as well as AKs and M16s, AR-15s, whatever you want to call them?
Well, the idea is that they'll be plowed under with overwhelming force.
First, you got to get them together in one spot. I mean, let's face it, most of these motherfuckers are in their houses. And their houses are spread over a vast range of territory.
And what's that Mao quote about the revolutionary being like a fish in
the water of the people? Yeah, sure. Like a fish in the water of the people. You see, the thing is that unless you've got a really good list of all the firearms in your area, there isn't shit you can do about it. On top of which, I imagine there'd be a bunch of burglaries just as soon as all that started to happen.
Yeah, officer, I wish I knew. It is a terrible shame. Here are the serial numbers. Oh, actually, I don't have all of them listed.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, see, the thing is that one man with a .22 caliber rifle or one man with a .22 caliber pistol can gather up all the hardware he wants. He just got to be sure the person he shoots to get the hardware is wearing the same size boots he is. That way he's got a complete set. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. Most of the police, most of law enforcement are going to start off obeying orders, but as soon as they get out there and they start seeing who they're taking these firearms from, it's going to come to a swinging halt. There'll be a lot more burglaries. Yep.
Because we haven't had our police forces completely overrun, completely subverted by the placement of SJWs like you've had in, certainly to a large extent,
Britain.
Yeah, and Germany.
Sure.
France.
Yeah, they haven't had a chance to get there yet. We've still got the good old boys from the Marine Corps. We've got the good old boys from the Army and the Navy and the Air Force. Soon we'll have some from the Space Force. The thing is that these boys are going to look at this and go, wait a minute, this guy's like my dad. This guy's like my Uncle Joe. The fuck am I going after his guns for and leaving all these firearms in the inner city? You see, that's what'll happen. They'll go after inner city firearms first. There'll be no two ways about it. That's how they'll make the operation totally unpalatable. Because by going after the inner city firearms first, they're going to cause such an uproar and a stink. They be coming down here going after our guns. Yeah, it's against the law for you to have a gun. That don't matter. I got my gun. You know. How many times do you hear about people being picked up, felon in possession? Every time you turn around, felon in possession. Felon in possession. Okay. Possession of a firearm while in the commission of a felony. These kinds of things are constantly on the speakers of every fucking metropolitan police department. They got enough to keep them busy there for a long time. Now, when you get out into the countryside, ain't nobody coming for anybody's guns out here. I'm sorry. That'd be like that old joke about the revenuer.
Right. You know, can I pay you when I come back down?
No, sir, you ain't coming back down. Yeah, that's it. See, that's the whole thing. If you turn these boys inside out up here, it doesn't matter if they're convicted felons or not, they got a gun.
Might just be black powder, might just be buried. Right.
All kinds of things. And it only takes one gun to get you more guns if you go about it calmly. Calmly.
Well, rather than going too deeply into the subject of revolution, perhaps we can turn and take a peek, if it suits you, at the subject of other people trying to invade this country, given how armed the populace is.
Well, they're booking a loser from the get-go. There'll be all kinds of people if see, I'm looking at it from this standpoint. We're in the midst of an invasion right now. Most of the immigrants, refugees, they're all young men. There's a few females, a few mamazitas, but most of them are young men. And the young men are basically scumbags. Now, I'm sorry, but it's true. If you're not a scumbag, then you come in by the port of entry. If you've got a reason, like these refugees supposedly have, if you've got a reason that you're afraid to stay in your home country, and you come to the port of entry and you tell them the reason, and they listen. They have people whose job it is to listen and to tell the truth from bullshit. The ones who are hopping the border, partner, it takes a lot of money to hop a border. I've heard $4,000 and $5,000 put forth as the amount the coyotes charge you.
And that's not talking about food, and that's not talking about the considerable amount that's going to come out of your pocket or out of your ass in one way or another. Just, handing over tokens to the hungry bear juggling on the bridge,
You got it.
There's somebody there waiting at every threshold to get their piece.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, there is. And what I'm looking at is, where does all this money come from? Who's paying this money? Who's paying to have all those unescorted minors get on board that train?
Audio just went off again, too.
There we are. Little odd that that's a train a train, Ollie. It's got like an engineer and a driver and all these people, and it just piles up with folks all across top of it. You'd think they'd stop and shoo them off, wouldn't you?
Sure, we're not going anywhere till people are off the train. There's also issues of liability even in Mexico. I mean, hardy har.
On top of which, they could stop anywhere they wanted to and let the national police come get them, right?
Without even having to tell them in advance. It could be out in the middle of the desert where you could see everyone that tried to run.
My goodness, my God. Ollie, that sounds like a setup to me. Sounds like somebody's being paid.
So how are you going to tie us in without, having my channel removed to the subject of an armed populace in the U.S.?
Well, armed populace in the U.S. eventually gets tired of this.
Well, the Molly Tibbetts news did just break, did it not?
There you are. On top of which, you've got a whole lot of people who are getting real tired of it. And one of the things they're starting to talk about now is, why don't American citizens get to decide who comes to their country and who doesn't? Why is it that suddenly, just because you're an American citizen, you've got to go, oh, well, I'll just be quiet, just hush up and pay my dues and just, hi. Excuse me, hola, amigo.
Rather flies in the face of self-determination, does it not?
Yeah. See, I look at it from the standpoint of, no matter how you book this mess in, you've got a real live loser in there. Real live loser. And it's called, I'm armed, but I let you run over me. That operates exactly once. Exactly once. Either to my person or within my hearing. And then I rethink that situation. And I say, I've got a gun, and this motherfucker wants to come in my house and do shit. No. Well, it's one step from that to this motherfucker wants to come in my country and do shit. No, I just don't see it being a winner.
And what do you think about the increasingly bellicose stance of the NRA? You get these Dana Lash, clips that come out, and they're increasingly, they're just kind of baldly saying it now. They're playing to the other side as well. It is part of the same political theater. And yet, you are getting NRA-funded, NRA TV and the different clips that appear, on social media, Twitter, Facebook, and they're like, they're subversive scumbags. They almost literally say it. Who are trying to take over your country and overrun everything and destabilize everyone. And that's going out to whatever, I don't know, somewhere between 5 and 10 million NRA members. Yeah. And the concealed carry, I just recently saw some statistics on that. We were talking in the past, about different types of ammunition that you carried, or, and I was asking you about, what medicine you think these weapons should be fed and that sort of thing. And you were talking about how you just did this or that because at the time there weren't that many people carrying. I just looked at, I started carrying at 21, as you may recall. It's the moment it became legal for me. And just since I started carrying in the early 90s, it's like the number of people in the country with concealed carry permits is like tripled, not to mention all the now constitutional carry states.
Sure.
So it seems to be picking up. And I just wonder, in addition to the other stuff we're discussing, are there any implications of that maybe I should be thinking about?
Well, yeah, you can think about this from the standpoint of, after you've got enough people running around armed, there are going to be some people who are going to run around and shoot folks.
That concerns me because I'm seeing here in my hometown, I've seen a whole lot of news recently about people just being shot in the head on the street. And I think I mentioned to
Well, now
you,
that's basically gangs.
yeah, or people who've taken offense. But the bottom line here, I think, is that you are seeing a lot more minorities getting guns legally.
Yeah.
And I think that's reflected now in the fact that they've got that Colion Noir guy over at NRA who's a black gun fan. And I think you're going to see minorities get guns. And I think we are going to see a spike. Generally we don't see it and don't hear about it, about, legal gun owners using them in stupid ways. But I think that we're probably going to see more of that, which is...
Well, that's why they got in this stand your ground law. They want to make it so you can stand your ground. You don't have to retreat. You don't have to feel that you must retreat. You can feel that you can stand your ground right there where you are.
Although that guy in Florida who got pushed to the ground and then shot the dude afterwards doesn't look like he's doing as well. Although it remains to be adjudicated.
It does remain to be adjudicated. It truly does. Now, he's got a little back history in there, too.
Yeah. Which doesn't... I mean, I saw the video. Yeah, he was attacked, but at the point at which he shot him was kind of like, come on, man.
Well, to me, that whole thing was blown out of proportion by the guy's activities at first, going over to the woman and giving her hell because she's in a handicapped parking space. If he feels that way about it, he should have called the police.
Right. That ain't his job.
That's not his job. But I can understand when the fella came out and pushed him to the ground, that gets to be his job.
Yeah, he just should have shot him sooner.
Well, there's that. There are all kinds of ways to think about it. I think about it like this. If they ain't bothering me, they ain't bothering me. If they ain't bothering anybody else, they ain't bothering anybody else. Obviously, when the girl pulled up in that handicapped parking zone, there weren't a whole lot of handicapped people looking to get into it.
Right.
Okay, fine. I believe the phrase is, so fucking what? Who cares? Now, if it had been that somebody was banging up on somebody else there, if her husband had been beating her, whatever, now that might have been something to get into. But this fellow looks like a nosy kind of bastard.
Right. And your point is a very important one. If they're not bothering me, fine. If they're not bothering anybody else, fine. If they are, the next thought is, I can call 911 because that's their goddamn job.
That's it.
Not mine. Then and only then if that is no longer, not an option.
Well, if it's not an option or if it's going to take too fucking long. Great big old 6 foot tall fella beating the hell out of some 5'2" woman. Well, that's not quite right. Might have to slow him down a little bit. See, the thing is that the whole thing comes down to you've got to remember that you are more responsible because you have a firearm, not less.
Yeah, that's been very much my experience. You can't, you have to think about where you're going before you go and think through whether or not it's going to be a place that you don't want to be because you are a weapons. You're held to a much higher standard. You have to, your behavior, everything has to be clean and right.
Yep.
I mean, you can't even get in fist fights.
Nope.
You can't be hanging out at a bar showing your ass or just being loud.
That's it. You've got to be civil. You've got to be polite to everybody to the nth degree. You've got to be pushed into something. Not just charge in because I've got a weapon. That's not the way you do it. But now, as far as these illegal aliens coming through, if I were on the Texas-Mexican border and I had a whole bunch of them coming through my yard every night, I might just set up a system where I was catching a bunch of them. If I was on the New Mexico Mexican border, Arizona Mexican border, can't do it on the California, I might just catch me a bunch of them and hold them until the Border Patrol got there. And anybody that want to be held, well, they could rest quietly on the ground. It'd be no problem at all to me, because I look at it from the standpoint of these people are breaking the law in the first place. By coming through my yard, they've obviously shown they don't care the first fucking thing about abiding by the laws, anything else. All right. They've got 2 strikes against them from the get-go. They broke a law to come in. They're breaking laws now. 3rd strike, well, that means you're out.
And so how would you summarize this entire topic for us then? This idea of an armed population and whether or not it really matters in terms of facing off with a corrupt government or facing off with the prospect of an invaded country?
Well, I look at it like this, Ollie. Praise the Lord, pass the ammunition, and keep your powder dry.